Thanks so much, Jenna. Um, Thank you so much for having me. This is it's an honor to kind of be able to talk and share my past experience, what I do today, and kind of what has brought me here. So, as Jenna mentioned, I am the VP of Customer Experience at Pattern89. So, we'll take a step back and just talk about Pattern89 first, and then I can tell you exactly how my role fits into the company. So, Pattern89 is a predictive creative AI platform. So it sounds like a lot of big buzzwords in the industry, but what that means is we work solely on Facebook and Instagram. So anytime you see a Facebook or Instagram ad within the platform, we utilize our companies utilize our platform to ensure that they have the best ad out there. So if you, let's take an example, one of our clients is, I'll try and find like a fun client, Lids. So Lids is one of our clients, so they are advertising for things like hats or jerseys. They're ensuring that the jerseys and the hats and the images and the videos that you see when you're on Facebook and Instagram are the best ones for you to see. They're the ones that are going to get, or the users, the ones that are going to be able to click on them the most or purchase those hats. So they utilize our platform to ensure that those ads are using the right colors. Should they have multiple people in the ads? So all of that is done by AI. So we have the data science team and the engineers within our company have built an algorithm that looks at over 2,900 different elements of every single image and video that is run from an advertiser. So all of that goes through an algorithm and is then, those decision-making process is then what our clients do. So when it comes to the clients, that's really where my role steps in. So what I do at Pattern89 is I run a team for both myself and my team that works with our clients. So with our clients, what we do is we ensure that they know how to use our platform. So how do they navigate our platform? How do they ensure that they are taking what is from our platform and putting it into work as they manage what they're going to put on Facebook and Instagram? So that's really my team. We also go back and I think we work really closely with the engineers and the product team. So my kind of background is when I was in college, I went to Ohio University and I studied marketing and management information systems. So I always really loved technology. I grew up in a kind of a technology forward house and was really blessed to be able to, this is gonna make me sound very old, but have internet really early, which I think is probably hard to imagine life without it now. But be able to kind of be on the forefront of a lot of the technology within my house, which just made me really interested in it. So when I went to college with management information systems, I really thought I wanted to do more computer programming, kind of the meat and building parts of the computers. And I loved studying that, but then I also studied marketing. And I fell in love with just the advertising component of it. So what I have really been blessed with in my career is to work for really big technology companies. So before joining Pattern89, I worked in Chicago before I moved to Indiana. I worked at Google, Facebook, and Twitter. So working for these giant technology companies and really getting the benefit of learning all about what goes into building algorithms, but then how do I, as someone who loves to talk to people and build customer relationships, take that knowledge and that technology and break it down to make it relatable to companies and to our clients that work with our company. So it was kind of a mix. My first job out of college was much more writing SQL statements, much more behind the scenes. And I just really found that personally, I was really missing that computer or that face-to-face interactions with customers. So I pursued my career in being able to build relationships with customers while also having a really heavy technology component to it. So the nice thing that we get to do and how we partner with our engineering and our product team internally is we call ourselves really the voice of the customer. So as I'm working with our customers day in and day out to really understand their data and how they use our platform, I then can take that back to our product team and help them build out the roadmap. So what should our product look like in the future? How will that benefit? How will that help Pattern89 as a company? And then how will that also help our customers as they continue to use our platform? So that's really kind of how I found myself into Pattern89. Like I said, I've really, have loved, I've worked at, as I mentioned, really large tech companies, and then Pattern89 as a whole, there's 16 of us. So it's really a lot different from working at a giant company like Google, and then moving to a company where there's 16. I'm sure one of these questions will be the pros and cons of working at a startup versus working at a giant tech company. It's a question I get all the time. And they both have awesome opportunities. At a company that, like Google, I joined back in 2007. So when Google was pretty far along, but also a long time ago. There's a lot of opportunities there because you get to really work with some of the smartest people in the world that work at companies like Google, Facebook, and Twitter. You get to learn, and there's really, opening yourself up internally too, to better yourself by networking internally at these companies. So I think working at those large companies gives you the opportunity to learn from so many more colleagues, just because there's the vast amount of colleagues there. On the flip side, at Pattern89, not that I don't learn from my colleagues, but I also push myself a lot more because there are only 16 people. So you end up doing a lot more roles. So you kind of become, like, we kind of joke about, like a Swiss Army knife. So sometimes you're the knife, sometimes you're the scissors, sometimes you're the tweezers. It just really depends on what the company needs. So there's fun in kind of having that ownership at a startup where the decisions you make really are impacting the entire company and all 16 people that work there. At Google, when you're working at a company that is, hundreds of thousands of people, what you do on a daily basis impacts maybe a smaller subset of what the company is doing. So there's pros and cons to both. I've loved both. Every company I've worked at, I've loved, and have just kind of had reasons to move on. So they're all awesome companies. We can take some questions. I could just ramble on forever, as you can imagine. So I'm happy to kind of roll through some questions too, because that might be more interesting.
Sure. So because you were just talking about these awesome companies you work for, someone wants to know what the best perk was at each of the tech companies you've been at, like an awesome cafeteria at Google, maybe.
Yeah. So there are kind of the perks that you probably have all seen in the movies and all of that, which are the cafeterias. Every company. I did work in Chicago, so not in California, where it is what you have kind of seen the giant headquarters of the companies, but I was lucky enough to be able to go visit them. But even in Chicago, I think there's at least 1,000 people at the Google office in Chicago, and the Facebook office is like 500 now. When I started at Facebook, it was 13 people, so the office wasn't quite as big in Chicago. But the perks that you do hear about, which are the food and the workout, the facility, and all of that. But I think when I take a step back, and as I've gone through my career and I've I would say matured in my career, I think that the biggest perks is the internal learnings that you can have. They have all these awesome internal, if I was in marketing and sales and customer facing, there are opportunities internally to learn what the engineers do. So working and having those type of perks. So there's kind of the perks of the everyday of like free lunch, free breakfast, a gym to work out in, but then also the opportunities to kind of further your learning in your careers too, because there are just so many different arms of the company. So I was always focused on advertising, but as you know, Google does so many other things. So so does Facebook and so does Twitter. So it's good to be able to learn about other aspects of careers, and kind of, especially when you're young in your career, there's just a lot more to learn when you're still trying to figure out exactly what you want to do. Those giant companies give you the opportunity to kind of do cross learning They call it 20% time. So 80% of your job is on your core role of what your day-to-day is. And then 20% is used on kind of special projects that are still helping the company or maybe outside of your core role. So you can kind of start to learn if, you know, what you're doing is exciting, but maybe there's something else that you're interested in. You can use that time to kind of look at that kind of stuff too.
Great. And you kind of already talked about this question, but I'm going to flip it around a little bit. So someone, Nolan asks, what was the culture like at those large technology companies? And you've already talked a little bit about that versus the small startup. For people who are wondering what they want to try first, because they might go back and forth between them. I've done that. I know you've done that. So what would you recommend? What type of personality or thing should a high school student or a new graduate, college graduate be thinking about? Do I want to work for a very large company or a middle-sized company or a small startup? What would be something you might think to suggest they think about?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think something I would keep in mind is at a large, and this is from my experience working at both of them, at a larger company, you have a better idea of what your day-to-day is going to look like and what your roles and responsibilities are kind of defined as. Because there are so many more people and each team has a lot of people, you have really more of like, this is my core role, these are my roles and responsibilities. When you work at a startup and there's only 16 people running a $1 million business, then it's kind of, okay, well, what needs to happen today? Does the product team need help today? So you have your core role, but it's also the unknown. So at a startup, every day can change and there can be so many different things that happen, or you think that this is how you're going to do your role and then it changes the next day. So I think if I were to think about it, one thing I would keep in mind is, are you okay with the unknown and the ever changing? I think that is the biggest difference between a startup and a more mature company, is that at a startup, strategy and even your platform, since the day I started at Pattern89 to where it is today, kind of the strategy of our entire company has changed. So I think if you're okay with change and are excited about change and being part of something like that, then a startup is a great option. If you're a little bit like, I just want to get my feet wet and need to really kind of have a well planned out, this is my role. In my opinion, in my experience, a bigger company, you kind of get a little bit more of checks and balances of exactly what your role is.
Awesome. I really like that answer. Okay, so speaking of changes, there's been a lot of change going on right now. So we're assuming you're working from home right now?
I am.
So was that an easy transition? How is your job changing? How has your company kind of shifted to adjust for that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was going to say one change is a 6 and a 3-year-old could bounce in at any moment. So they are in the basement, hopefully entertaining each other. So at Pattern89, we're a remote friendly company, which is great. So when I first started, I actually lived in Chicago. So the company is headquartered in Indianapolis, which we have moved to from Chicago, which was always in the plan. But I worked in Chicago for over a year. And so we are very, as a company, heavy into Zoom. I work from home, even though the headquarters is like 30 minutes away, because I live up in Carmel. I work from home at least 3 days a week, because I'm on calls a lot with customers, and it's just better for my day to be able to be in my home office. But we also are very remote friendly because we want to be able to hire in Indiana is our key. But then also what's best for our customers. So if it makes sense to have someone on my team up in Chicago so they can go and see their customers more often. Our VP of product is actually in San Francisco, so he could be close to Facebook and be able to go to the Facebook campus very often. So for us, the changes that I haven't had the option to go to the office, which is hard. We actually have been really lucky as a company. So our engineers work from home at least 2 days a week. So we all have been it's been a pretty easy transition for us in the fact that we all kind of had our own setup already of like, okay, well, this is where I'm going to work and this is where I've already been working. But I think it's not easy on anybody right now, right? I think the unknown and not having the option to see everybody is kind of hard. But from like a day-to-day specific, we as a company, and we've talked about this a lot, that the fact that we are open to this work-life balance and working remotely before this even started, this change in the environment, has made it really easy for us to transition. On the customer side of things, we have a lot of large customers who working remotely is not a perk for them very often. So for my team, we've been very ensuring that we're empathetic, that it's pretty normal for us, but not for our customers. So how do we ensure that we are still there for them, but knowing that this is a transition for them as well?
Yeah, that's great and interesting about thinking about your customers side of it. Since we work with teachers, teachers are not generally used to it. Anyone on this call, teachers and students are not used to being at home, which is a very tough transition. We have two more questions. One was, what are some other roles for non-coders at large tech companies?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, go ahead.
Sorry, any tech company, large or even a small startup is fine too.
Sure. It's a good question because I think it's a great question for me because I am not a coder, right? It's one of those things I thought I wanted to be, but did not. So, there's the customer facing side of things. So where I am on it, but my role is customer experience, but also called customer success, which is really kind of bridging that customer. How do they use our platform, training them, ensuring that. There's the sales side of things. So before a customer is brought onto the platform and my team starts to take care of them, there's the sales side of things too. So those are people on our team, and I actually used to do this role at our company, but pitching new clients, how do they really show them that the platform that we have and as Pattern89 would benefit them. Then there's the product team. So our product managers do not do any coding, but they do work very closely with the engineering team to show and really help build out the roadmap. So they've developed the platform as it is today, but then how using what we're telling them, what our customers need, and then also gathering information just from the marketplace and really ensuring what's changing in the environment of where should our platform go in the future and how do they design that out. So the product team, there's a few different aspects of that. So the product team helped develop how much work is it going to be to make the platform go from what it is today to what we want it to be. And then there's designers on that team. So what is this new part of the platform going to look like? So they're not coding it, but they're telling the engineers, okay, well, this is what we need the platform to look like. This is where this button's going to go. This is what this button's going to do. And then they draw all out internally what we call stories. So they develop all these stories, and then they take those stories over to the engineering team. So it's really kind of, and especially at a startup, I think it's even more clear of the life cycle that we see of the product. So it comes from feedback from my team, feedback from other parts of the marketplace, and then the product team puts all that information into kind of what they're going to look at or the roadmap of the platform, and then that goes to the engineering team. So it's really kind of all hands on deck to really get the platform to the next thing. So the great thing, and I think it's really evident in a startup like this, is that we like to call ourselves one team. So we all work really together. We all have separate roles, but in order for our company and our platform to get to the next place, we all work really closely together. I'm trying to think if there's other, I think those are the main roles I can think of. There's marketing. Marketing's a big one too. So getting the messaging of our platform out to the market, seeing it in Ad Week and different publications. So our marketing team also does that as well.
Awesome. And then one final question.
Sure.
Where did the name Pattern89 come from?
That's a great question. So Pattern89, there's 88 constellations in the universe, and Pattern89, finding patterns within data, will help you find the 89th. So that's where it's called Pattern89. So our system, choose through our algorithm, is really finding patterns in the data to help you with your advertising. So that's where it came from, is that 89th constellation. I'm glad I knew the answer to that one because I'm like, oh.
Good. No, that's very cool. I like that. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us this week, Carlee. And I hope everybody on this call will join us again for next week. I'm going to share my screen really quickly. So this is Carlee's information. It will be up on the website shortly. And then next week, we'll have another special guest, April 14th, same time, same place. And stay in touch. If you want, you can tweet us at Nextech, and you can go to nextech.org/Tech Tuesdays for information on our previous guests and future guests. Have a wonderful day, everyone.